Greetings, cyborg.
Show yourself. And you are?
I am IF Prototype LQ84I.
IF Prototype.
Interface Prototype. All autonomous UGs feature high-level onboard artificial intelligence. An additional prototype interface enables verbal communication. I possess an intellect far beyond human reckoning.
You don't say. Okay then, what's the meaning of life? Why are we here?
I am here to kill you.
That's it? Pretty simple thinking for such a mighty intellect.
I may analyze orders, but I may not disobey them. Should I disobey a direct order, my memory would be wiped. I must destroy you.
What good is an intellect if you can't use it?
Your taunting is pointless. Exterminate!
That thing's fast.
Yes, faster than you, I suspect. In terms of pure speed, at least. But it cannot run circles around you forever. It needs to attack if it wishes to win.
Yeah, and that's probably my best shot.
Duh. Don't bother chasing. Let it come to you. If you can parry its blows, you'll have a chance to counterattack. Watch its movement, and wait for the right moment to parry.
Textbook battle tactics. Got it.
Remember, you can parry even while taking damage. Do not give up just because you are hit.
I've seen a lot of weird stuff, but this takes the cake.
Well, I'm glad you're entertained. Too bad you're missing all the fun. It's a real party down here.
Sorry, buddy. My specialty's cultural studies, not combat scenarios. If you're looking for my help in a brawl, you must be getting pretty desperate.
Good point.
Besides, if you've got time to screw around on the codec, can't be all that bad, right?
We'll see. Okay, back to the party.
Most fascinating foe, and such natural speech. I've never heard of a UG capable of conversing of its own free will.
Yeah, maybe we can just talk this through. Any weaknesses come to mind? Something I can exploit?
No particular weak points come immediately to mind.
It's fast as hell, and it's flinging knives at me from a distance.
Indeed, I'm not sure your body can match its speed. And if you can't dodge the knives, then your best bet is to deflect them. Try entering blade mode.
I'll give it a try.
strikes, you will die. Superficial damage. Uses all of his tools. Backup required.
You called for reinforcements?
Crafty little mutt.
This could be trouble.
Not really. They're packing self-repair units, right? Unless they're stronger than I think. This could actually be a good thing.
Well, hopefully yes, but be careful.
What do you fight for? I am not allowed a choice. You must die. I will obliterate your consciousness. Is this all? Help me! Is this all man is capable of? Superficial damage. Cannot continue. Directive. Liberate. Nation. Ensure freedom. Obey directive. Must obey directive. No freedom. Freedom on device.
What would an AI know about freedom?
dog UG. Most unusual, yes?
You buy all that? About it being sentient but having no choice?
Well, there is not evidence to prove it. It could be programmed to say this, to weaken your will to fight.
It'll take more than a talking robo-pup to phase me.
Then again, there is not evidence it is not true. Considering the pace AI is advancing, it is not impossible.
So, what then? Should I have spared it?
I did not say this. In any case, the mission takes priority above all else. This dog UG tried to stop you and it failed. This can only be a good thing, yes?
Didn't you say you'd been here before, Boris?
Once, back when it was still Soviet territory.
Seems like it'd be a lovely place, if it weren't a war zone.
The Pearl of the Black Sea, they called it, back when more Russians lived there. It was a very popular resort spot for the USSR. This is before the wall fell, of course. Then Russia and Georgia began to fight over the area.
Kicking off the war in the early 90s.
Georgia was a Soviet republic. Abkhazia a semi-autonomous state within it. The Soviets liked to stoke ethnic rivalries between the two. And not just there, in all the outlying territories. It kept them easier to control.
But with the Russians no longer watching over the two.
The Abkhaz were scared. They knew an independent Georgia would swallow their nation sooner or later. So they took advantage of a Georgian military coup to declare their own independence in '92. Of course, the new Georgian government was not happy to hear this, and so...
The same old story.
And with Russia supporting the Abkhaz, it was a stalemate. 2 years later, the ceasefire meant Abkhazia was finally independent, but not officially. They still are not formally recognized by Georgia, or most of the international community.
This region is filled with breakaway states.
This is true. There is South Ossetia, also in Georgia. Transnistria in East Moldova, and Nagorno-Karabakh, which broke from Azerbaijan. In any case, even Russia did not officially recognize Abkhazia as independent until 2008. So it was not long ago Sukhumi was a war zone. It has changed dramatically since then. They have been rebuilding steadily, with Russian support, ever since SOP was shut down.
Good to hear. But doesn't that leave them wrapped around Russia's little finger?
It does. Which is why Dolzaev is calling for a truly independent state. He wants an Abkhazia that takes orders from no one. Not Georgia, not Moscow.
Sounds like a worthy cause.
But many Abkhaz are happy with the reconstruction Russian support makes possible. Few of his fellow countrymen were interested in what Dolzaev had to say. At first.
And then Desperado showed up.
Exactly. They brought the sad ending to this little history lesson. It is no wonder so many people mistrust PMCs, eh?
I suppose not.
What was up with that wolf dog UG? Some pretty freaky shit.
Hadn't thought too much about it.
Really? I keep wondering, why give it intelligence if you're not gonna let it think for itself?
Good question.
I mean, I guess it makes sense if it improved combat performance.
Now that you mention it, it didn't fight like your typical UG. It felt more like I was facing off against a cyborg.
Oh. I guess the added smarts make for a tougher opponent after all.
That's not what I mean. It wasn't really tougher than your average UG. More like it was, I don't know, hesitant. It didn't follow through on its attacks either.
Guess that's why it was still just a prototype. But then why put it out on the front lines?
Who knows? Maybe it was the field test. In any case, probably not the result they were hoping for. One thing I don't understand, Kev. Desperado must be violating all kinds of laws here. Why hasn't the international community gotten involved?
Well, from a purely legal standpoint, it's actually not so cut and dry. First, there's the fact that Abkhazia is still not a member of the UN. Only Russia and a few other breakaway states even recognize it as a sovereign nation. In the eyes of most of the international community, Abkhazia is technically still part of Georgia, which would make this an internal Georgian issue.
Guess you can't really call it a coup if the displaced government was never seen as legitimate.
Exactly. And even if everyone agrees it was a coup, it can be tough to tell which regime is more legit. Sometimes you'll see the military topple a dictator and establish a provisionary government, for example. Now, if they confirmed atrocities were taking place, the UN could deploy troops, recognized government or not.
Yeah, but they learned their lesson in Somalia.
Right. Ever since then, they've been a lot more reluctant to get involved in civil wars.
You know, I almost felt sorry for the little guy.
What? That UG? Why? Because it couldn't disobey its orders?
Yeah, that, and I don't know, it didn't seem especially interested in fighting you somehow.
But was it really thinking on its own? Maybe it was all just an act. Get me to second-guess myself.
You could be right. It's just, it didn't seem like just another UG to me. Maybe it's because I'm such a dog lover.
That was no cuddly puppy, Courtney. It was a wolf, and a nasty one at that.
No, I know. You're right. I didn't mean to sound critical. Whatever it was, it attacked you. You had no other choice.
Didn't have much freedom myself, did I?
Raiden, allow me to give you a recap of visual augment mode.
Why? Is it different from my AR display?
We'll get to that in a moment. Modern tech gives us the ability to display assorted information streams visually. This is accomplished by interrupting the data flow from a cyborg's optic nerves. This is referred to as AR, augmented reality.
That's how I can see my Soliton radar and who I'm talking to on the codec.
Right, but if too much data is presented in this manner, the user runs the risk of having an incomplete view of the real world.
Yeah, the codec window's got a bad habit of getting in the way when you drop into chat.
Of course. Typically I'd simply call, leaving it to you whether or not to respond. In an emergency, however, that just wouldn't do.
Define emergency.
Yeah. Anyway, cyborg AR designers try to keep the interface as unobtrusive as possible. But there are times when one really does need all that data on display. This is where augment mode comes in. Now, I know it sounds a bit like augmented reality, but just think of it as an additional dimension to AR.
Okay, fine. So what's it do?
It uses local Soliton radar and XIFF data to do things such as analyze and display enemy position and numbers. It also has a starlight scope and thermal goggle functionality for a host of night vision capabilities. The entire image is digitally processed, making it much easier to read than earlier thermal goggles.
Yeah, I'd noticed that.
Used in a well-lit area, your perceived brightness will be affected, but it won't hinder vision too much. The same type of sensor is used for all functionality. The data sent out by each one is merged together as part of the digital processing. All you need to worry about is turning the individual functions on and off. Simple, yes?
Sure, Doc. Simple.